Some crimes don't make noise. They don't begin with a scream or a struggle. They begin with a decision to stay still. Two men sat inside a parked car. The engine was off. The street was empty. The light above them flickered like it was tired of watching. No one called for help. No one tried to leave. One man simply sat down beside the other. And from that moment on, the car never moved again. If stories like this pull at something dark and curious inside you, stories where silence does the most damage, make sure you subscribe now. These are the cases people remember wrong, the ones that don't end cleanly. And once you hear this one, it won't let you go. Listen carefully, because what happened next didn't look violent at all. That's what makes it worse. For nearly 12 hours, a car sat, running in silence. The engine never stalled. The radio stayed on. The driver never moved. No one screamed. No one knocked on the glass. No one thought to call for help. And when morning finally reached a quiet Missouri neighborhood, the teenager inside the car had already been dead for most of the night. The unsettling part wasn't just the death. It was the stillness. The driveway didn't belong to him. The house didn't belong to him. And the man who would eventually discover the body had never seen the boy before. Just before 7 that morning, a property owner pulled into one of his rental lots inside a manufactured home park on the outskirts of Springfield. It was supposed to be a routine stop. Collect rent, check on a tenant, leave. But his attention was pulled immediately to a gray sedan sitting awkwardly near the edge of the driveway. It didn't belong there. The car was angled slightly, like someone had parked in a hurry and never corrected it. The engine was still running. At first, the landlord felt irritation more than concern. Cars showed up overnight sometimes. Friends, visitors, people who stayed too late and left too early. But something about this one felt wrong. The car had been there too long. He stepped closer. The windows were fogged from the inside. The radio hummed quietly, looping the same low song. Inside, a young man sat slumped forward in the driver's seat. His chin rested against his chest. His hands lay still in his lap. He looked like someone who had simply shut down. The landlord knocked on the window. Nothing. He waited. Knocked again. Still nothing. He tried the door. It opened. The smell inside the car wasn't alcohol. It wasn't smoke. It was metallic. Blood. The landlord stepped back immediately and called 911. By the time deputies arrived, the neighborhood was waking up. Cars backed out of driveways. Doors opened and closed. People moved through their morning routines just yards away from a death no one knew had happened. An officer approached the vehicle slowly. The driver was young, barely more than a boy. His skin was cold to the touch, his body stiff. There was no pulse. Whatever had happened to him hadn't happened recently. At first, officers weren't certain what they were looking at. The blood was pooled near his chest and mouth. Someone suggested an overdose. Another officer wondered about internal bleeding. Then the body was shifted slightly. Behind the right ear, almost hidden by the angle of his head, was a small, dark wound. A gunshot wound. Close range. Precise. In that moment, the atmosphere changed. This wasn't a medical emergency. This wasn't a tragedy. It was a murder. And not a chaotic one. What disturbed investigators most was what they didn't see. There were no shattered windows, no broken glass, no torn clothing, no signs of a struggle. The doors were unlocked. The keys were still in the ignition. And tucked neatly into the waistband of the teenager's jeans was a handgun. Loaded, holstered, unfired, which raised a question that immediately turned the case cold. If he was armed, why didn't he use it? And if he never reached for it? Why was he shot? Neighbors were interviewed one by one. Several recalled seeing the car arrive sometime after midnight. Music played briefly. Not loud, just enough to notice. One neighbor remembered looking out a window when the music stopped. Another recalled watching the car pull forward slightly, then reverse, as if the driver was adjusting the parking. After that, nothing. No raised voices, no argument, no gunshot anyone could remember hearing. The car simply sat there, running. Silent. How does a person get executed in a neighborhood full of people without anyone noticing? By late morning, the victim was identified. His name was Evan Miller. He was 18 years old. He didn't live in the neighborhood, didn't have family there, didn't have friends there. His home was more than 30 miles away. Nothing about his presence made sense. Detectives began rebuilding Evan's life piece by piece. To his family, Evan was quiet, polite, restless. He had dropped out of community college, moved between short-term jobs, always said he was figuring things out. But there was another side to his life. Evan sometimes delivered small amounts of drugs, nothing large-scale, nothing that usually ended in violence. But it meant meeting people he didn't know, late at night, often alone. His phone became the most important piece of evidence. Missed calls, unanswered messages, notifications that stopped abruptly. One contact appeared again and again, saved under a single name. Jace. The last outgoing message was sent less than an hour before Evan entered the neighborhood. It was casual, short, unremarkable. Like Evan believed this was just another stop. Investigators now believed Evan hadn't come to that driveway by accident. He was there to meet someone, and whoever that person was had been inside the car with him. Later that afternoon, police located Jace Thompson, 20 years old, local, no violent criminal record. He didn't resist speaking with detectives. He appeared calm, polite, almost relaxed. He admitted meeting Evan that night, said they talked, said it was brief, said nothing felt tense. He said he got out of the car and walked away, and when he did, Evan was alive. At least that was his version. Because when forensic results came back, they told a quieter, more disturbing story. Jace's DNA was everywhere inside the vehicle, on the passenger seat, on the center console, on the interior door handle, which meant one unavoidable truth. If Evan was shot while sitting in that driver's seat, then Jace wasn't nearby. He wasn't passing by. He wasn't outside the car. He was sitting right beside him. And that was the moment investigators stopped asking what happened in that car and started asking who Jace really was. Because if he left Evan alive, why was he the last person sitting next to him? Jace Thompson did not look afraid. That was the first thing detectives noticed when the door closed behind him. He didn't shift in his chair, didn't rub his hands together, didn't ask how long this was going to take. He sat still, almost comfortable, like someone waiting for a conversation he believed he could control. His voice was calm, measured, polite. Too polite for a room where a boy had died hours earlier. Detectives let him talk. They asked where he grew up, who he knew in the neighborhood, how long he had known Evan. Jace answered without hesitation. His story flowed easily, as if he had practiced it. Not out loud, but privately, in his own head. He said he met Evan late that night, said they talked in the car, said it was nothing serious. He talked about the weather, the music playing softly in the background, how quiet the neighborhood felt. He avoided the moment that mattered, the moment he left the car. Every time detectives nudged the conversation there, his sentences shortened. Details faded. Time blurred. He said he stepped out, said he closed the door, said Evan was alive. Then silence. Not nervous silence, intentional silence. Detectives didn't rush to fill it. Eventually, Jace spoke again. He said Evan felt off, said he got uneasy, said he decided to leave. When detectives asked why he didn't check on Evan afterward, why he didn't text him, why he didn't call for help, Jace stared at the table. He had no answer. That's when the tone shifted. Detectives didn't accuse him. They softened their voices. They talked about fear, about panic, about how people react when they think they're in danger. They explained self-defense. They told him this was the moment that mattered, the moment where his future changed. They told him there were only two paths forward. Either Evan reached for his gun, and Jace reacted, or Evan never stood a chance. Jace's breathing slowed. He nodded. Then he spoke. He said Evan reached toward his waistband, said he panicked, said everything happened too fast. He said he pulled the trigger because he thought Evan was about to shoot him, but detectives already knew what that story ignored. The gun found on Evan was still fully holstered. The snap was intact. The weapon had never been drawn, and the wound behind Evan's ear told the rest. The barrel had been pressed directly against his head. Not waved, not fired from across the car. Pressed. That wasn't panic. That was proximity. That was control. When detectives showed Jace the photos, he turned his head away. Not in shock, in calculation. They asked where the gun came from. This time, Jace paused longer. Said it wasn't his. Said he borrowed it. That answer cracked the night wide open. Because detectives already knew where the gun came from. Earlier that evening, Jace had been inside a nearby house just 4 doors down from where Evan's body would later be found. The house belonged to Marcus Lewis, 23 years old. Known to police, not for murder, but for drifting close to it. Drugs, weapons, people who didn't ask questions. When detectives questioned Marcus, he smiled. He laughed at the wrong moments. He said people were always in and out of his house. Said guns appeared sometimes. Said he didn't keep track. But detectives had photos. Photos taken the night before Evan died. A handgun sitting openly on Marcus's living room table. The same model. The same caliber. Marcus said he didn't know whose gun it was. Then detectives told him Jace had already talked. And that Jace said Marcus handed him the gun. Marcus's smile disappeared. His posture collapsed inward. He said Jace left suddenly. Said he didn't know where he was going. Said Jace came back later acting normal. That detail mattered, because phone records showed messages between them just before Evan arrived. Short messages, deleted messages, planning messages. At that point, investigators stopped pretending this was spontaneous. Evan wasn't meeting a buyer. He was walking into a setup. The plan was simple. Get Evan alone. Sit beside him. Take what he had. The gun wasn't for defense. It was for leverage. What they didn't plan for was how easy it would feel. One shot, no struggle, no warning. Evan never reached for his own gun. Never had time to understand what was happening. And after it was over, Jace didn't run. He didn't call for help. He reached over Evan's body, took the drugs, took the cash. Then he did something that would haunt investigators long after the case closed. He went to a party, laughing, drinking, standing in a room full of people while a dead teenager sat alone in a car with the engine still running. Hours passed. No one checked on Evan. Sometime later, someone heard Jace say something he shouldn't have. "I did it! I gotta get out of town!" Those words spread quietly at first. Then, all at once, by the time police moved in, there was nowhere left to hide. In court, Jace didn't cry. He didn't look back at Evan's family. He pled guilty to second-degree murder. 35 years. Marcus received probation for supplying the weapon. Evan Miller never got a chance to explain his side. Never got to leave the car. Never got to grow older than 18. His mother still thinks about the last message he sent. Still wonders why he trusted the wrong person. Still wonders why the engine kept running, while her son didn't. Because sometimes the most terrifying part of a crime isn't the violence. It's how close it is, how quiet it is. and how easily someone sitting right beside you can decide you won't be leaving at all. The courtroom was quiet when Evan Miller's name was spoken. Not the tense quiet of an interrogation room. Not the heavy quiet of a crime scene. This was a different silence, the kind that comes when everything that can be said has already come too late. Evan's mother sat in the front row. She didn't cry when the prosecutor spoke, didn't look at Jace Thompson when his name was read. She stared straight ahead, hands folded tightly in her lap, listening to strangers explain her son's final minutes as if they were numbers on a page. She learned details she had never wanted to know. That Evan never tried to run, that he never reached for his gun, that he never knew the shot was coming, that he died exactly where he trusted someone enough to sit beside them. Jay stood when the judge asked him to. He looked smaller now. Not afraid, not remorseful, just diminished. He said very little. He did not apologize. He pled guilty to second-degree murder. 35 years. The sentence echoed through the room, but it didn't land the way people expect justice to land. There was no closure, no sense of balance, just the confirmation that Evan would never come home, and Jace eventually would. Marcus Lewis stood in a different courtroom months later. No cameras, no packed benches. He received probation for supplying the gun, a few years of supervision, then freedom. The system had finished with him. Evan's family never would. After the case closed, detectives returned to Maple Ridge Estates one last time. The car was gone, the driveway empty. New gravel had been laid. A different tenant lived in the home. Children played in the street again. Life resumed in the way it always does, quietly, without permission. But some things don't disappear just because they're no longer visible. Neighbors still remembered the sound of that engine running through the night. Still remembered waking up and seeing police tape where a car had sat for hours. Still remembered how ordinary everything looked. Until it didn't. Evan's mother avoided driving at night for a long time. When she did, she found herself staring at parked cars, at silhouettes in driver's seats, at the empty space beside them. She thought about how her son trusted someone enough to unlock the door, enough to let him sit close, enough to believe the danger was outside the car, not inside it. Sometimes she replayed his last message in her head, not the words, the tone, casual, unconcerned, alive. She wondered if there was a moment, just a second, when he sensed something was wrong, a shift in the air, a silence that felt different, or if it truly came without warning at all. Because that's the part that never leaves. Not the violence, the normalcy, the way the engine kept running, the radio kept playing. The neighborhood slept, while a life quietly ended in a driveway that didn't matter, until it did. Jace will spend decades behind concrete walls. He will age. He will adapt. He will one day step outside again into sunlight. Evan will remain 18, forever frozen in a moment no one heard. No one stopped. No one questioned until morning. And that is the truth that ties everything together. The stillness of the car, the closeness of the betrayal, the emptiness left behind. Because the most dangerous place Evan Miller was ever in was not a dark alley, or a bad neighborhood, or the wrong side of town. It was the passenger seat, right next to someone he thought he knew. And the reason this case still matters is not because of how loud it was, but because of how quiet it stayed. Because sometimes the worst crimes don't announce themselves. They don't shatter glass. They don't wake the neighbors. They sit beside you. They wait. And by the time the engine stops running, it's already far too late.